Good morning to everyone. Uh, so happy to be here today. Thank you, Abu. And thank you, Denvin. I always thank God for the kind of worship team we have, as usual. I really enjoy worshiping the Lord when our teams lead in worship. So, dear friends, this morning, I would like to share a few thoughts on God as we see Him in the life of Daniel. And it's a beautiful life. From the time I have been studying and reading the Bible and understanding and reading the book of Daniel, it's a very complicated book, difficult to understand. And therefore, I will be sharing few simple thoughts that has always encouraged me in my life. And I just want to thank God for Daniel. And let us hear a few things as we look at the life of Daniel. You know, the meaning of name Daniel, God is my judge. The context of Jews in captivity and the powerful Babylonian Empire. This has been the context in which Daniel lived and he worked. It is possible to live a faithful life when surrendered by pagan influences and powers when you look at the life of Daniel. It is possible. Daniel was surrounded by the alien culture and he was a lonely outsider, a stranger. But I call him a daring Daniel, actually. Daring Daniel. Very few you will find today who will stand for God. And Daniel did that. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. And the requirement of the Babylonian Empire was very interesting. You should be young, without physical defects, handsome, and aptitude for learning, well informed, quick to understand, qualified to serve the king's palace, to teach language and literature of Babylonians. This was the requirement. And Daniel fulfilled beyond the requirement, actually, as we know the story of Daniel. So, my first thought this morning, I would like to look at, we call in today's management term 360-degree evaluation. Like your boss evaluates you, your colleagues evaluates you, and also your subordinates evaluates you. And similar picture I see in the life of Daniel. Something very interesting that strikes to me, like what people think about me. I think great about myself. My children always talk, Daddy, you are thinking something. Let us look at what people are thinking and what people are talking about Daniel and the God of Daniel. And that's what I wanted to share. And you look at, finally, these men were his colleagues. They said, we will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it has to do with his worship to the living God. In all his administrative capacity and work, his dealings with people, his behavior, his personality, his temperaments, his outlook, they were not able to find anything that we need to suggest Daniel how he should live. I don't know how he developed that. I do not know. But there is a secret that, that Daniel could live out a very dynamic life in a hostile situation. And therefore, these men were noticing that. Men were noticing. Further, you see, administrators could find no fault with Daniel and said he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. They must have found this in some dealings, no? I mean, if I make repeated mistakes, my boss will say, you are all the time, Jonathan, negligent on this. Or you are lazy on this. Anything repeatedly we do becomes our lifestyle and it can be noticed. They have repeatedly saw that Daniel was trustworthy. Ulta, something very different. Okay, these are only his colleagues. Okay, these are only colleagues. But look at the next one. King Nebuchadnezzar testifies that Daniel found none equal to Daniel, 10 times better than all the magicians. And that's what Sabina has read. Then these kings, talking about the God of Daniel, everything he does is right, his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. And king fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor. This can happen only when you see a person very intimately close with God. Not able to understand the kind of intimacy Daniel had. Not just 3 times that he prayed, or 3 weeks he mourned, or 3 years that he trained. No, that does not really tell about his intimacy. As we sang, day and night, night and day, day and night, night and day, was very true with Daniel. Not only this king, but look at the Darius, witnessed the reign of God in the life of Daniel. How did he witness reign of God in the life of Daniel? These kings must have been watching Daniel very closely. The way he prays, the way he relates, the confidence that he has when the situation are adverse. They were noticing and they were curious about the reign of God in the life of Daniel. And the innocent, and so he was greatly disturbed. Spent whole night in his disturbance. Then he talked about the God of Daniel, which Sabina has read. For he is the living God, and he endures forever, and his kingdom will not be destroyed, and his kingdom will never end. He rescues and saves. He performs signs and wonders in heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. King Darius came under the reign of God. So I issue a decree that every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. It's not only talking about Daniel, but also talking about the God of Daniel. Declaring about the God of Daniel and also not only declaring, but making the decree of the experience that these kings had with Daniel. What a transformation that kingdom is experiencing, the Darius kingdom is experiencing. One life, a daring Daniel can challenge this kind of healthy disturbance in the kingdom of the kings in his time. Not only kings, but look at the angel Gabriel says, let us look at, look at the queen. Queen says, Queen witnessed God's reign in Daniel and said, there is a man in thy kingdom in whom is the spirit of the living God. I think it's very ulta in today's context. Like, we don't see Daniel preaching. We don't see Daniel talking about God. But people are talking about God of Daniel. Because the kind of life Daniel has lived out. And now you see the angel Gabriel, who says, as soon as you, there are a lot of things angel has said in the passage, but I just picked a few. As soon as you began to pray, an answer was given, which I have come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed. And also in chapter 6, verse 3, it says, the excellent spirit was living in Daniel. You know, so this is what the 360 feedback from all corners, from any angles you look at Daniel. You know, because of the secret is Daniel. Now God has caused the officials to show favor and sympathy to Daniel. What do people say about us? And did we ever ponder what people have said about us, whether it is right? And if we have audacity to accept that what others have said about me is right, will I take any steps to rectify myself? Daniel did not live to prove that I am right and all my colleagues and their views are negotiable. He did not live to prove that God lives in me. He just lived out God in his life. That's all. Amy Reese Anderson says, we live in a world where integrity isn't talked about nearly enough. We live in a world where the end justifies the means, has become an acceptable school of thought. Far too many salespeople over-promise and under-deliver, all in the name of making their quota for the month. Applicants exaggerate in job interviews because they desperately need a job. CEOs overstate their projected earnings because they don't want the board of directors to replace them. Entrepreneurs overstate their performance because they want the highest valuation possible from an investor. Investors understate a company's value in order to negotiate a lower valuation in a deal. Customer service representatives cover up mistakes they made because they are afraid the client will leave them. Employees call in sick because they don't have any more paid time off when they actually just need to get their Christmas shopping done. C.S. Lewis says, integrity is to do right thing even when no one is watching. And Alan Simpson says, if you have integrity, nothing else matters. And if you don't have integrity, also nothing else matters. There is no shortcut to holiness. It must be the business of our whole life. I always enjoy and thank God for William Wilberforce. And therefore, my dear friends, let the fairness prop up in my life, in my dealings, in my family, in my church. You know, everything he does is right, trustworthy, neither corrupt nor negligent. Daniel the innocent. And now I just want to share another thought. We just saw 360 feedback. Now let us look at the process in which Daniel went through. It's very interesting. You know, Daniel was afraid. He pleaded for mercy to reveal the mystery of the dream of king. Daniel was concerned about the coming desolation. Daniel turned to the Lord and pleaded with him in prayer, petition, fasting, and in sackcloth and in ashes. Says, I had no strength left, face deathly pale, and I was helpless. I bowed with my face to the ground and was speechless. My strength is gone, and I hardly can breathe. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that they were to enter the king's service. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room, where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just he has done before. That has been his custom. You know, Daniel living under powerful kings and living with the chief officials, commanders, the king's guard, the satraps, the administrators, the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the astrologers. You can just imagine the process has been extremely, extremely tough. At this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, this man said, which I already read to you. You know, so I just wanted to summarize his process in saying, the fire of furnace or fire of ring and the lion's den experience were just the story of Daniel's faith in God. He already overcome the Babylonian lion and the ring of fire, that is Babylonians' rules and regulations. He already experienced. What did Daniel actually went through? You know, the kind of process I can tell you, he has to go through king's anger. He has to undergo through his colleagues' accusations. He has to go through the concern of his co-captives. And he has to go through that loneliness of souls. This has been Daniel's process in which God has put him. And Daniel comes out as a refined gold. We should thank God for this man, Daniel. So lastly, as I close, I want to share with you, we call it non-negotiable, and that is Daniel's faith in God. And in my language, I call it Daniel's mantra. Is nothing but to fear and trust God day in and day out in all the situations. And faith in God has been the foundation of Daniel's life. Because of his faith, he could make that resolutions. And the resolutions are not just events, one time happening. He was constantly walking with God. It happens to say that I will not eat king's food. It just happened. It's an event. But that is not all that we need to understand. All about this is Daniel's life was based on his strong trust in the living God, no matter what. For Daniel, God was number one. From every angle, for Daniel, God was number one. All the rest falls in the second place. We read the next one. We know this statement very well. But even if he does not, we want you to know, God, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. The taste, whether he should eat king's food or not, the taste, whether he should worship the image that king made he worships or not, these are just simple events. Daniel has done his homework so well because I am not able to understand Daniel's intimacy with this living God. And therefore, it wasn't a big thing for him to handle all complicated situation that we see in his life. So this is all, my dear friends, I wanted to share with you. It's not about, I'm not talking about a successful Daniel. No. We don't need to be successful. Actually, it is a small story about great God in Daniel. That is the greatest thing I see in this. So, as we go from here, few takeaways. When you see Daniel with God, authorities and colleagues will cross their line and come to glorify God. Daniel did well with the process. We struggle with process. We complained about why waiting so much? Why this? Why that? We all the time try to get answers from our whys. But Daniel was answering the question how. And he went through that process very well. You know, people of faith like Daniel travel against the current. I like that. Knowing the consequences, they travel against the current. You know, in my understanding, we have only two kinds of fish in the world. Only two kinds of fish. One fish that swims, floats and swims alongside the current. But there are the fish that swim against the current. You can see that in the waterfall. You understand waterfall? Water falls down. But this fish climbs against the current. And I like that kind of fish. And Daniel was that kind of servant of God who stood against the current and who traveled against the current. He did not misuse the privilege. At Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego administrators over the province of Babylon. But Bible says, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court. He did not misuse the privileges, which he could have done very, very easily. He could be next to the king, actually. If at all he obeyed the king, he could be the next to the king. And the whole world at that time would come under Daniel. But he saw following and becoming a small servant of God, a child of God, is greater value than becoming a king in that empire. Daniel's profession was the platform to demonstrate about the life of God. So this is what, my dear friends, I wanted to share with you this morning.